just a little update on the Azure Blue Mach 1. I've been daily driving it a lot lately. It's the most I've ever driven the car consecutively. I haven't even put 1,000 miles on it yet. I haven't even put 500 miles on it yet. But I usually put 1,000 miles a year on the car or less. And the last couple years it's actually been sitting a lot, and I just changed the oil before it had been sitting. You know, I take it out maybe once a month just to drive it around, but even though the oil has probably less than 1,000 miles on it, I decided to go ahead and change it because it's been a couple of years and it's just not worth risking your rod bearings and everything going bad. It's just not worth the $30-something full synthetic oil change for me. So decided to go ahead and change the oil, and you can see in this car it's very beautiful. You can see in those heads it's not caked up and gross. I've had other Mach 1s that have been really black and, you know, brown, dark colored in the valve covers there. And this engine's just very clean. Car has 86,000 miles on it now. And something I do when I change the oil, just to show you a little tip here, is when I take the oil filter off, that's the housing up there. Hard to see, but anyway, when I take off the oil filter, I always stuff a plastic bag up underneath where it's going to fall so I can catch it and have it go into the oil catch pan, so I'm not dirtying up this K-member. This is always so dirty on Mustangs because the oil filter is on sideways, and when you take it off, it just soaks that whole area, the rack and pinion. Everything gets oily from the oil change, so that's just something I like to do. But I do use the Motorcraft oil filter and Mobile One 530 full synthetic. The 530, even though, yeah, I know the Mach 1 says you're supposed to do 520, but that was an emissions thing. The 530 is much better for this engine. And I do 6 quarts, 6 to 6.5 quarts, to make sure that it's always got plenty in there. These engines with the 32 valve heads, they can get a lot of oil up in there. And you know, when the car is actually running, it's using a lot more than 5 quarts. And so it's a good idea to have plenty of oil in there. And I've heard that the dipsticks actually read kind of low on these cars. So it's a good idea just to keep, you know, plenty of oil in there, make sure you're not having any problem. So anyway, that's just a little update on the car. I did actually work on the ABS a little bit because the ABS light is on, and I'll put those videos in right here. You've probably seen me do this trick before, but I always let these sit upside down for a few minutes, and then I go back and I unthread the cap upside down, and you'll see actually how much oil can drain out of one of these. See, it's a whole cap full. And I do that with every one of them. So that adds up. Alright, now that we have 6 quarts in there and everything, the car ran for a minute and it sat for about 10-20 minutes. Let's look at the dipstick for an example and see what it has, okay? Now this will probably be very difficult. I'm going to try to do this, but okay, you can see it's reading low. It's definitely, it looks like it's almost to there, okay? There is a little bit right here, okay? You can see it on my finger there. So maybe the dipstick just doesn't pick it up as well. I have this all set up here so we can see. Here's the beautiful 32 valve 4.6 liter engine. And it has some breakaway, and it's really neat. You can see coolant passages and the pistons and everything. But here, let's look at the oil pan. Come down here, the oil pan, and you can see here's the dipstick. It runs all the way down here. And if you look at it, you can see what the oil level is. That's the oil level, and that's where the dipstick is. So the dipstick might be reading here or there. It's really not that big of a difference. Here's the pickup down here where it's sucking the oil up into the oil pump. But anyway, so say that dipstick's not reading exactly right, that's fine, but you can see here, there's plenty of room in here to add a little extra, half a quart, maybe even a quart. I've heard people run up to 7 quarts in these 32 valve engines. And so if you add a little extra, it's really not going to hurt anything. Here's the oil pan level though. So if you exceed that, if you top it off too high, it could blow seals out of the rear main, and it can bubble, and it can have problems if you have too much oil in there, obviously. But I think adding just a little extra is not a big deal. I've heard people run up to 7 quarts in these. And so anyway, I just thought that was really cool. And of course, I always like to consult the owner's manual, and here it shows on the engine oil includes filter change. See, that includes filter. We're looking here at 6.0 quarts for both the 4 valve and the single overhead cam, so the 2 valves. So both these engines take 6.0 quarts. So you can run 6, you can run 6.5, whatever makes you feel safe about it. And so anyway, I know there's 6 quarts in it right now, including the filter. So here's what I did with the ABS light. You see the ABS light's on, and I think it is the module, but I decided to go ahead and play around with it and clean up the sensors, because I know they're magnetic and they get metal shavings on them. Look how terrible this one was on the driver's side. This thing looks like a freaking porcupine. It's just totally full of metal shavings, and so I thought this might be why the ABS light was on, because it was just not getting a reading on there. So I went ahead and cleaned this off, and the best way that I found to do it was just to take a microfiber towel and wipe all those away. I didn't want to use any kind of cleaner or anything on it, but I did use a microfiber towel, and you can see how nice this turned out. It's just clean. But anyway, I also decided to go ahead and get some brake cleaner and shoot the inside of the spindle that the ABS reluctor wheel is on there, and clean that off too. So you can see all this black that came off of the reluctor wheel for the ABS ring. And so I cleaned those things, hoping that that was going to be the problem. And I went ahead and did the rear ones too. They weren't as bad. This is just an example of what the rear ones look like. This is kind of what normal sensors usually look like, with some metal shavings on them. Kind of dirty, kind of gross, but you can just see that's about normal. So it's not like the front ones were pretty bad, and I was pretty excited thinking that this was going to fix the problem and that the ABS light would be off after this, but it wasn't. And I even unplugged the battery for 10 minutes just in case there's some way that the computer was thinking that the ABS was having problems, but it didn't do anything. And this all started just driving into town one day. The ABS light would just come on and off and on and off, and now it's at the point where it's constantly on. So it's probably the module at this point. Last time I fixed it with the yellow Mach 1, it was at the actual ABS line that went under the rear seat. But in this case, it was doing that when I was driving the car just out of nowhere. And these cars are really well known for the ABS modules failing, so a lot of people just drive around with the ABS light on all the time. So anyway, unfortunately that didn't fix the problem. We'll see what I do with that eventually. But the car runs great. I bought the car 11 years ago with 75,000 miles on it, and it's at 86 right now. And so I don't drive it a whole lot, but I am starting to drive it now, and I actually am daily driving it for the first time ever. But I do feel like I am worth the miles that I put on this car, and that eventually I'll be gone, and so I might as well use the car and have a lot of fun with it while I still can, because you just have to balance your life to the point where you feel like you're getting the use out of your things, and that you're not just going to die and leave them all behind without ever enjoying them. And I have other Mustangs that I keep the miles low on, and it's nice to have a variety. And over the years I've had so many Mustangs that I've felt justified in leaving this one sit for a while and only take it out on weekends. But it is nice to drive it around. And anyway, so that's just a little update on the Mach 1, and I'm really excited to be driving it and using it and enjoying it. And this car really hasn't had many problems at all since I've owned it. I did the oil filter adapter gasket on it, And the only other things I've really done to it were things to modify it to my liking, like the deep dish rear wheels and the lowering springs and everything. So it's just been a great car, and I'm enjoying it right now.